All right. Hi, Senator.
Hey,
Hey, and howdy, everybody, and welcome to Senator John Hickenlooper's Town Hall. My name is Helen Kadich, and I get to serve as the Senator's Western Slope representative based out of Durango, Colorado. First of all, thank you all for joining us tonight. We do want to use as much time as we can for Senator Hickenlooper to answer your questions, so I just have a few short housekeeping items, and then we'll jump right in. Many of you have already submitted questions ahead of time on our website, but for those of you who haven't, please submit questions by commenting on our Facebook stream, and we'll also be keeping an eye out on our Twitter account. So you can just tag @Senator Hick or reply to our tweet. We want to get to as many questions as we can, but please bear with us. We're already receiving quite a few. If we aren't getting to your question tonight, you can always contact the Senator in our office by phone or email. Contact details are on our website at hickenlooper.senate.gov. Now, Senator, I'm going to turn it over to you for a few opening remarks before we get started.
wow, great. And thank you, Helen, and hi, everybody. And I want to thank everyone for joining us tonight, taking the time out of your busy day. I want to start out by extending condolences to the family of Mark Thor Olson, who was the pilot who died while we're responding to the Kruger Rock fire last night. And just a terrible tragedy. And we're trying to keep everyone impacted by that fire in our thoughts and our prayers. This is our third statewide town hall, and it couldn't come at a better time. You sent me off to Washington to bring people together, to try to solve problems facing Colorado, facing our country. I promised I'd work with anyone to get anything done. And there were a lot of doubters. I don't blame them. I don't blame them. I understand, given how polarized things are in this country right now. But on Monday, President Biden signed our bipartisan infrastructure bill into law. And this is big. It's the biggest infrastructure investment since the New Deal. It's by far the biggest climate change investment ever. Includes tens of billions of dollars that will come into Colorado. And I think most importantly, we did it on a bipartisan basis in both the House and the Senate. So we showed America and we showed the world that American democracy still works. There were 22 of us in the Senate, 11 Republicans and 11 Democrats who came together. We'd meet almost every week and tried to find common ground and figure out what we could pull together. In the end, when we took the final bill out on the Senate, we got 69 votes out of 100. So that's 19 Republican votes to go with all 50 Democrats. And I think it really says a lot about the time and the commitment and the effort that all of those 22 senators put into this, trying to make sure we found the best compromises possible. I'm sure a lot of you have heard all about the bill, but you may be wondering what's in it, what's it mean for Colorado. So let me be clear. First and foremost, this means jobs, more jobs for Coloradans. Good paying jobs, union jobs. Everywhere in this bill, there are jobs for pipe fitters to get rid of lead drinking water pipes, for carpenters to fix our roads and bridges, our airports, union jobs to build clean energy transmission lines, jobs capping old wells out in the rural parts of the state. Second, this means clean drinking water, better roads and bridges that are all resilient or more resilient to climate change. It means a national electric vehicle charging network and a big boost to clean energy by modernizing the overall electric grid. Third, this means better internet access for every Coloradan. And just as we brought electricity to every house in the last century, in this one, we're going to connect every house to reliable, high-speed internet. And lastly, we are doing all this without raising taxes. We're paying for this by finding unspent funds from the federal government to all the states, clamping down on some of the abuses, the fraud that we saw in unemployment insurance. And so we can do all of what you're going to hear tonight without raising taxes. And this isn't just a bill for today. It's a bill for tomorrow. Our infrastructure is ill prepared for our new climate reality. And we saw that with the I-70 mudslides in Glenwood Canyon. Now there's going to be money to rebuild and to build better so that our infrastructure will be better capable of standing up to tomorrow's disasters. We're investing in wildfire and drought resiliency. At the same time, we're seeing all across the country, but I know we're seeing it in Colorado as well, a supply chain crunch that raises prices for working families. This bill invests in ports and airports and freight rail lines. All of them are just maxed out and become bottlenecks, especially the ports. This bill invests in ports and airports to increase capacity. It invests in our roads and bridges, where over 70% of the goods in this country they travel on those roads. The pandemic showed us how essential the internet is for everyone, from small business owners to kids in school and families trying to stay connected. This bill is going to expand broadband access so rural Coloradans aren't left behind. In Colorado, we know we can't wait to address climate change. This bill is the biggest bill on climate change in history. But I'm the first to say it's not nearly enough. It's a great start. There's much more to do. And our bipartisan support gives me optimism for the future. That there's more to come. This bill also includes my first bill that becomes law, the Recharge Act. Trumpets, please, trumpets. It's going to make it cheaper for the average person to charge an electric vehicle. Electric vehicles are the future. Detroit's talking about having every model in the next 18 months, every model available in an electric vehicle. Once they scale up, they anticipate these will ultimately be less expensive to manufacture than the traditional gas guzzlers. I mean, EVs are the future, especially if we want to meet our climate goals. So make no mistake, the bipartisan infrastructure bill is huge for the country, huge for Colorado, and again, huge for our democracy. We showed all those people around the world that were, China's been saying that American democracy can't get it done. We showed that we still can get it done. We can come together and find the compromises and do big things. We're showing all the doubters that when it really matters, we can still come together and put points on the board for the American people. So I want tonight to hear from you. I want to hear what your biggest issues are, what your concerns are. I'll try to answer every question I can. If I can't answer it, I'll find out where the answer is and get it back to you. I do try to get out around the state when I can. COVID's obviously made that very difficult. But I am going to start trying to get around the state and just be very careful. I always appreciate hearing straight from people what you all think the issues are. So anyway, thanks for being here tonight. Allows me to hear directly from you, to answer your questions on how we're doing and to receive, to receive the information you think I need to know. We've had hundreds of questions already, more coming in tonight, and we'll answer what we can. You can always reach out to my office if we don't get the questions tonight. And I guess let's get it started. Let's go ahead and questions.
That sounds great. Awesome. So, Senator, we're going to really dive into a lot of the topics that you just covered in your opening. One that a lot of folks wrote in about is about clean energy. So, Julie in Fort Collins writes, how quickly will clean energy aspects of the infrastructure bill be put into place? What are the obstacles? Will there be any subsidies for clean energy and less or none for coal, oil, and gas?
So, Julie, that's a great question. And thank you for that. Timelines vary. There are dozens of sections on clean energy, and each one has its own timeline. I do know that there's a real priority to get started quickly, but some of these projects are going to take several years. Some of the funds are going to go to supercharge programs that we know work. One example, there's $3.5 billion that's going into the Department of Energy's Weatherization Assistance Program, which helps low-income households make energy efficiency upgrades. That money's going to go out the door pretty quickly, and each state will be distributing it within their state. Some of the funds are going to go to entirely new programs. But one example is another $3.5 billion is going to be setting up direct air capture hubs around the country. We know that no matter how good a job we do at cutting emissions, we're also going to have to figure out, how to get some of this carbon that's already in the air out of the air. And I think this is going to be a big step in that direction. But anyway, an entirely new program, something like that will take months to get up and going. In terms of subsidies, there's no subsidies for fossil fuels, but we are investing in carbon capture and direct air capture technology to get CO2 out of the smokestacks and out of our air. Obviously, implementation is going to be tricky here. Our office is going to be working with the Department of Energy in the States to get this done as quickly as possible. So the money is for all all the technologies that we can use to possibly reduce emissions.
That's great. Thank you, Senator. We're going to jump over to roads on a question that definitely hits us on the Western Slope. So Scott in Greenwood Village asks, how will the new infrastructure bill help relieve traffic on I-70?
Oh my God, I-70. It's, when we expanded the twin tunnels back when I was governor, we saw just how long it's going to take to really build out that capacity. But it is still a priority. It's been a priority for 30 years. The bipartisan infrastructure bill is going to be the largest investment in our transportation system in decades. At least $3.7 billion for our roads in Colorado, and it's going to be targeted towards reducing major congestion and choke points on roads and bridges, in tunnels, and in our rail systems. But the emphasis is going to be making our infrastructure resilient to climate change at the same time we reduce those bottlenecks. The bipartisan infrastructure plans going to allow CDOT and local governments across Colorado to begin tackling the highest priorities, the highest transportation project priorities that we have. So I know one that is near the top of the list is reducing congestion along Floyd Hill, that segment of I-70, just kind of at the top of the foothills. Also, we'll address finally, and we've been working on this for years, but the leakage repairs and maintenance for the Eisenhower-Johnson Tunnel, and then repairing damage caused by the Glenwood Canyon mudslide over the summer. That's just the priorities, but we will do congestion mitigation up in northern Colorado and southern Colorado, out on the west slope. These investments will go a long way.
Thank you, Senator. We're going to jump over to Deborah in Delta, who's asking about drug pricing. She writes, do you have a plan to lower prescription drug costs, especially for seniors and low-income folks?
Yes. So we're looking at a number of things in the Build Back Better initiative, the Build Back Better bill. But one of the key things we're really working on is letting Medicare negotiate prescription drug prices so that we go a long way towards ending that price gouging. Look at what people have to pay for insulin. It's gone up, many times over in the last decade, far more than the cost of manufacturing it has increased. So things like capping costs for insulin are, examples of how we'll address the price gouging and make sure that it doesn't continue.
Great. Thank you so much. It's such an important topic, as is this one that we're going to take live. So this is from Twitter, from Carrie Murphy writes, strong voting protections are critical for a strong democracy. The John Lewis Voting Rights Act needs to be passed now. What are you doing to ensure this passes?
Well, most Americans, almost all Americans believe in that voting is a core part of our democracy. And I think if we have more people voting, it strengthens democracy. If there are fewer people voting, it weakens it. Voting rights preserve all of our other rights. And I think this shouldn't be a Democratic or a Republican priority. It should be an American priority. We have in Colorado one of the national models of voting where we get really high turnouts, and we get statistically accurate audits so that we make sure that there isn't any fraud or chicanery, any mischief going on. It's also one of the most secure elections. To do that, we were bipartisan. In other words, our voting system was designed largely by Republican county clerks working with Democratic clerks. The turnout rose almost 10%. We had the second highest turnout in the country this last election, and in our 2018 election, roughly 87% of registered voters in this past November. And that's a staggering total, and something we should be proud of, that, getting more people to vote is just super important. It's frustrating that this has become a partisan issue, that right now there are a few of the Republican senators that have blocked even having debate on the Senate floor about this issue. Anyway, we have to secure voting rights and look at all the avenues to do so. The only way right now, unless we can change the filibuster, the only way we can really address this issue is by getting 60 votes on the Senate floor. We're working very hard to try and do that.
And thank you for that work, Senator. We are going to jump over to another question that is certainly important across the state, and again, really felt on the Western Slope, and that is a topic on water. So Dorothy in Alamosa writes, in terms of water, how can we break out of the short-term mindset and get long-term solutions in place?
Say that again, I missed that.
Yeah. Dorothy in Alamosa writes, in terms of water, how can we break out of the short-term mindset and get long-term solutions in place?
Well, thank you, Dorothy. And it's funny. We know in Colorado that water's for fighting, whiskey's for drinking. Water's becoming a big issue everywhere. And I think that you're raising that issue about, let's not fight over the issues right in front of us, but we got to look at this long term. And I think long term, we have to accept that current drought conditions might stay. There are a lot of climate plans based on global warming that suggest it could even get worse. The drought contingency plan, which I worked on to help negotiate as governor, envisions a role for conservation, or demand management, they call it. Making sure that we all use a little less water. So, to make sure if we can't use as much water as we had in 1990, that we're still able to have the water we need, for our farmers and our ranchers, to make sure we have the food we depend on. We'll get through this, but we'll get through it a lot more successfully if we all work together. So these measures should be voluntary, compensated. The infrastructure bill provides funds for both the upper and the lower basins to implement the drought contingency plan and look at some of these ways that we can make sure that we do use the water we have more wisely.
Great. Thank you, Senator. So we're going to talk about the Build Back Better plan. I said it correctly. That might have been the first time. I'm so glad. So Susan in Louisville says, on the heels of your success to pass the bipartisan infrastructure bill, how are you working with your colleagues to ensure the Build Back Better Act will pass the Senate?
Well, Susan, that's the question. Thank you for the question. But it is a tricky process. We have several very moderate. I'm a moderate Democrat. We have several far more moderate than I am, and they are slowly considering and working through the details of this bill. And I will say that no one has put a line in the sand and said we're not going to go past this point yet. And I think that's a very good sign. We're all working to try and find a path forward, and everyone wants to get this done. There are a number of things in the Build Back Better that I think are crucially important. There are middle-class tax cuts. They extend the child tax credit. There are clean energy tax credits. Although I do always, whenever I say that, I say we need to recognize we need some sort of a fee and dividend, a way of charging a little bit more based on the amount of carbon pollution that's created whether we're making steel or concrete or cars or driving cars, whatever. When we put carbon emissions in the air, there ought to be a little fee on it, and that money should be collected by the government and then rebated. 90% of it should be rebated to people on a per capita basis, the same amount of money for each person. That way, people that are working long hours for a living and don't have huge bank accounts, they'll get back more money than what they would end up paying in increased costs. They're going to be in Build Back Better. There'll be workforce training, and again, we're going to have jobs. We want to make sure that people from all parts of our state, all walks of life, have the skills so they can get those better, high-paying jobs. There'll be affordable childcare, universal preschool, affordable housing. And again, this is not finalized yet, but we think there'll be a big increase in low-income housing tax credits. And if you look at the homeless issues up and down the Front Range and really across the country, you got to just build more affordable housing. You got to make sure people get paid a little more money, but they got to be able to afford housing. Back when I was governor, 40% of the homeless were working at least 40 hours a week. And that's, if you're working 40 hours a week and you can't afford the rent on an apartment, then something's screwed up. That's just not the way it's supposed to work in America. In Build Back Better, we're going to have billions for small business lending and contracts. I've got a few bills that are within that small business package in the Build Back Better bill. One's a micro SBIC, which allows more diversity in actually the professionals that decide who gets SBA loans. We've also got something in there for Native American affairs, and then loans to co-ops. Colorado especially has a tremendous number of co-ops, and oftentimes they have a harder time qualifying for loans for stupid, I don't think important reasons. So we're fixing that. Let me think, what am I forgetting? Affordable Care Act premium reductions. We're going to keep focusing, extending those that have made such a huge difference in what people are paying for insurance. Letting Medicare negotiate prescription drug prices. So get rid of the price gouging. I talked about that already a little bit. I think let me just finish and just say the bill is completely paid for. And it's paid for by making the wealthy pay their fair share. And, when you look at what people of Colorado say when asked how they feel about having the wealthy pay their fair share, it is overwhelming. 85-90% of Coloradans feel, yes, the wealthy should pay their share. Not more than their share, but, they have tasted the sweetness of success. And an awful lot of our very successful people in this country pay no taxes, and that's just not the way the system's supposed to be. So that's going to be it. I'd love to figure out some way to get immigration reform in there too. We'll see how that might work. Anyway, thanks for the question.
Thank you, Senator. It's such exciting work coming up and an amazing moment right now just to celebrate the infrastructure bill as well. So thank you. We're going to jump over and talk probably a little bit more about that infrastructure package on a topic around broadband from my county commissioner down here in La Plata County. So we can go ahead and play our first video.
Hello, Senator Hickenlooper. My name is Matt Salka, and I'm County Commissioner for La Plata County. First, I want to thank you for all your work on this bipartisan infrastructure bill. Second, I'm excited to see about this $100 million going to the state of Colorado for expanding our internet access. My question is, how do we expect to see those dollars come into La Plata County to help address our rural broadband needs? Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Matt. Thanks for the question. And this is a big deal. Every state's going to get $100 million to address their broadband. And there's 15 billion in total. So that first $5 billion comes to an equal thing to all the states. And then the 10 billion will go to those states that have the greatest challenges. The bipartisan infrastructure bill is going to target those communities lacking broadband first. Make sure that, first everyone has access. Did I get that wrong? $65 billion investment for infrastructure expansion, affordability, and digital literacy programs is the largest sum we've ever expended in one lump sum. So I got the number wrong again. But $65 billion is going to go a long way. The $100 million block grant for Colorado will allow the state to survey and identify and develop plans to expand access towards those Coloradans that really don't have broadband. And we got broadband to every town in Colorado, but we haven't gotten broadband to every home, to all of our citizens. The additional funding that will come in will be made available on a formula grant basis to ensure high-speed networks that are future-proof and hopefully will last for generations. This is all going to be laid out by the Colorado Broadband Office, which we helped set up when I was governor. They're going to lead this, and we can certainly connect you and anyone else who wants to be connected to the Colorado Broadband Office. And they'll, once this bill gets passed, they'll be able to develop a timeline and let you know how quickly the money can get put into use.
That's great. Thank you, Senator. So we're going to jump over to one of your favorite topics, I think, and that's carbon pricing. So IZ in Boulder asks, what are you doing to educate yourself, Colorado voters, and Senate colleagues about the value and urgent necessity of a carbon price plus carbon dividend?
Well, thanks, IZ. And here's, I think, a price on carbon and then what they call a carbon dividend. So you rebate back to everybody the amount of extra money they had to spend because of that fee, that tax. I call it a fee just because it sounds less imposing. But, climate change is real. I got a master's in earth and environmental science, mostly studied geology, but studied a fair amount of environmental science. Climate change is real, and it's happening faster and faster. And I'm not sure I can think of another way that we'll be able to address it without putting some sort of an innovative system in place that motivates and gives a benefit for people trying to find ways to use less, to use products and services that create less carbon pollution, less carbon emissions. So that means if you're going to look at two cars and one of them is made with solar energy and the steel's green steel and didn't create emissions, that greener car will be less expensive because there'll be a fee on it. And yet the fee gets rebated back to people. So the person that didn't use the energy, that bought the green car, will get a little bit large, not a lot, but a little bit larger rebate. And so there'll be an incentive for everyone to buy green products and to buy green services. So how am I communicating that? Certainly this is not a solution that everyone's aware of. Many people are aware of it. I'm trying to do interviews everywhere I can. I try to bring it up somewhere in every interview. I think even a modest carbon price drives more emission reductions than any other policy we've seen, anything that we're considering. I also think it supercharges other policies when you enact them together. So I shout it out at every door and window. And it's funny, about 3 months ago, I had the chairman CEO of ExxonMobil, I think it's still the largest oil company on earth. And they now support some sort of a fee and dividend with border adjustments to create a price on carbon pollution. And, if you do the border adjustments so that countries like China, they're making steel with coal-fired energy, so there really is dirty, much more carbon emissions than what we would ever consider appropriate here in the United States. That means our steel and products made with our steel, our manufacturers should have a competitive advantage. And the European Union has already agreed that they would enact similar tariffs. Think back to some of the tariffs we had against China in the administration of President Trump, these would be tariffs, but would really benefit American companies and really benefit those companies that are, using cleaner processes and creating less carbon emissions. So I am a big supporter of it. We'll see. It's complicated. A lot of people aren't willing to put in the time to really sit down and understand what it means. It's hard, but it is, I think, the single most powerful thing we can do to really address climate change. And, I think we're in a process right now. I think that 50 years from now, we're going to look back on these few years as part of the great transition. In the next 5 or 10 years, we're going to completely transition into electric vehicles. We're going to have, to a large extent, we're going to have clean electricity and clean electrical generation. And what we're going to see is not just electric vehicles, electric cars, electric trucks everywhere, but you're also going to see people having they're breathing cleaner air. You're going to have, better views, but you're also going to have a lot less asthma and respiratory problems. And I think when we look back 50 years from now, we're going to call this the Great Transition. This was the Great Transition that when we actually moved into a clean energy economy. And just like when this country transitioned into electric vehicles from horses and buggies, that took about 10 or 12 years. When we first started using railroads, that took 20 years. These transitions can seem like they're taking a long time, but when they finally come, they'll come pretty quick, and they will be transformational.
Thank you, Senator. I haven't thought about the horse-drawn buggies in a while, so thanks for that transition. Hey, we're going to be switching topics into an area that I know you've done a lot of work in your time as governor as well. So Alex in Aurora is asking about gun violence. I've been a teacher in Aurora public schools for 4 years. Every year, gun use or threats of gun use have affected my students' lives and my workplace. What federal action will you take to reduce access and use of guns?
Well, that's one of those questions, Alex, that we've been working on for a long time. And I remember after we had the shooting in the Aurora movie theater, I called up one of my mentors, was a pretty conservative guy, lifelong Republican. And I asked him what he thought about universal background checks. And he didn't hesitate. I mean, he was a hunter, had rifles, handguns. He said, of course, we should have universal background checks. We want to do everything we can to keep weapons out of the hands of people that don't know how to use them and kids that are just going to hurt people. Anyway, we've seen too many mass shootings in Colorado, and we mourn the families, the victims' families, and we share in that deep sense of urgency that something has to be done to address this nationwide panic. And as weird as it sounds, I mean, we got universal background checks passed in Colorado. We still can't get it through the U.S. Senate. What's amazing, and this is, a lot of people use this as a major argument for why the filibuster, which allows one senator to prevent any measure from being discussed, let alone being voted on, but prevent it from being discussed. That filibuster right now is keeping gun safety legislation off the floor of the Senate, even though roughly 90% of the American people think that universal background checks is a good idea and that they would support it. So, I mean, I look at the shooting like we had this week in Aurora, and, our heart goes out to the families and the victims. But it's a nationwide pandemic, a different kind of pandemic, and we need federal action. I support the Background Check Expansion Act, which would mandate universal background checks like we did in Colorado. Would close the gun show loophole that allows people to sell or transform a firearm without conducting a background check. I think these are common sense gun safety issues that aren't going to deny people their Second Amendment rights. I think that this is the time when we should start making some big strides on gun safety. One thing that I've gotten to know Mark Kelly and Gabby Giffords pretty well, and Gabby's looked at the National Highway Transportation Safety Board, and they spend almost $1 billion a year trying to make our highways safer, and yet we don't have something that's parallel to that in terms of making our country safer from gun violence. Think how much better we'd be if there was a national program that really helped train everybody on how to keep their weapons locked up, made sure that they kept the ammunition locked in a separate place, made sure that when their friends or their children looked like they were going through difficult emotional times, they made sure they didn't have easy access to a weapon. The suicide rates just going through the ceiling, and a lot of those suicides are with handguns. This is our country. We're allowing ourselves to be terrorized by our neighbors to a certain extent, by our community. And I think that, one important first step would be to look at making sure we get universal background checks.
Great. Thank you, Senator. We're going to jump over to a live question over from Facebook. Beth is asking about the topic of inflation. So she writes, how is he addressing the current issues the citizens are facing? Inflation, gas prices, high housing costs.
Inflation, gas prices, high housing costs. So the inflation we're seeing now is largely due to the pandemic. I mean, the bipartisan infrastructure bill hasn't even passed yet. Build Back Better hasn't passed. So what we saw were bottlenecks in our supply chains caused by when we had the pandemic and nobody was buying cars for 2 months, nobody was buying anything. And so the manufacturers of all the chips that are used in cars shut down. And they moved those production facilities to places where they were selling chips, such as for video games. Those sales went way up. And now we don't have the capacity to shift back easily. It's going to take probably another year. I think that the supply chain constriction that we're dealing with, we'll work our way through it. And it's not the end of the world. I'm not saying it's a great thing to pay several percent more, but I don't think it's permanent. I think the other factor that's involved in this is the number of people that have left the workplace, especially in the service and healthcare sectors where COVID not only wore people down, but by staying home, people saw that they wanted to have a better job. A friend of mine, Rachel Carlson, has a company called Guild, and they spend a lot of time trying to help workforces all over the country get more skills, get the workers to be able to get additional skills so they can qualify for better jobs. And she calls it the 3 Ps, that during COVID, people reevaluated what they want from a job. They want pay, that's the first P, but they also want purpose. They want to feel that their job means something, not just for the paycheck, but to them. And personally, they want it to mean something. And then the third P, you have pay, you have purpose, and then you have pathways. And pathways is to a better job. So if I take this job, what's my promotion going to get me? Am I going to get paid more money? Is this job going to lead to a better job and ultimately a better job after that? I mean, that's what we always called a career. And there are a lot of people, especially in the service industry, that are really rethinking whether this is the way, whether they want to put up with the stress and the work for what is really not very high pay. Now, the bipartisan bill is going to address parts of this. It's going to invest $17 billion in ports, $25 billion in airports, and there'll be investments in freight rail to increase capacity, which is going to help us. Part of the bottleneck is now as stuff comes into our ports, we don't have the capacity in the ports to get the containers off the ships. We don't have enough truck drivers to drive the trucks with to pull the containers, into the middle of the country. So Build Back, the bipartisan infrastructure bill is going to put tens of billions of dollars into relieving this. And it's also going to invest in the roads and bridges where 70% of our goods travel in this country anyway. Now, Build Back Better is also going to invest in in middle-class families in many ways just by reducing costs for them. Childcare, there'll be paid family leave, the child tax credit will have major increases to support more affordable housing. I think that's going to encourage a lot of people to get back to work as well. So this is a difficult process we're going through, but I mean, I think the only permanent amount of inflation we're going to see, and I think it's a relatively, 1 or 2%, or maybe 2.5% max, we're going to end up with that inflation. It's going to be wages. I hope that's going to be, that we're lifting people up into the middle class again. And if that 1.5% or 2% of inflation is lifting enough people out of the middle class, I think most of us will think that's worth it.
Absolutely. Thank you. We're going to do another video question now. We have, exactly. Our techies in the background. We'll pull up our video question number 2 that focuses its question on environmental justice and climate change.
Dear Senator Hickenlooper, my name is Isamar Pichardo, and I'm a resident of Denver, Colorado. My question to you is, how will the infrastructure bill help BIPOC and low-income communities who have been excluded and are often the most vulnerable to be more resilient in the face of changing climate? Thank you.
Great, thank you, Isma. And this is something we've known for a long time, that communities of color are disproportionately impacted by the climate crisis and have been disproportionately impacted by pollution for generations. Our infrastructure bill includes money to help clean up what I call legacy pollution. I mean, when you think about it, everybody deserves access to clean air and clean water. It should be a public health priority in every city and every state in this country. And I believe that transitioning to clean energy is going to go a long way towards helping solve this. Clean energy equals clean air. In the bipartisan infrastructure bill, there'll be $3.5 billion for water infrastructure in tribal communities who have for so long been neglected. There's another $15 billion to remove lead pipes from our drinking water system. In other words, in Denver, we still have way too many homes where the pipe coming in from the street is lead. We know that's not healthy. And yet it just takes a long time to work through it unless you've got access to, these federal resources that we're going to be able to use in this case to make sure everyone has clean water. Our bills are also going to create millions of good paying jobs, middle class jobs. Many of these are going to be for people without a college degree, many of them coming from marginalized neighborhoods. And I'm trying to make sure that we get investments in workforce training to make sure that we help all people get the skills that they need to be able to compete with these jobs. Too often they don't get the training. And then last, there are tax putts, like golf putts. There are tax cuts for working families. And again, to pay for all this, we're going to make sure that we level the playing field, that, the billionaires like Jeff Bezos, who went years and years and years without paying any taxes. Elon Musk, they're making a big deal about paying taxes now, but the system, hundreds and hundreds of these billionaires don't pay anything. And I think the truly wealthy should pay their fair share, as should the large corporations. Many of the large corporations pay little or no taxes as well.
Great. Thank you for that important question and answer, Senator. We're going to jump over, speaking of electric vehicles, in part Elon Musk, in part many others. Dan and Linda are both asking about our Recharge Act and electric vehicles. What is the Recharge Act and what's included in it?
Well, thanks, Dan. And it was Linda, Dan and Linda.
Dan and Linda.
So as I said a little earlier, I think electric vehicles are going to be a big part of our future. I think it's going to happen once it really starts transitioning. I think it'll go quicker than most people think. And we've got to make sure that we have, charging stations all across our highway network. not just in Colorado, but across the country. And when you build out all these recharging stations, in some communities, this hasn't happened in Colorado, but in some communities, the electric utility would build in all the infrastructure around, expanding this network just into that recharging station. So they would charge a lot of money per kilowatt hour for people recharging at that station. And it's just not fair. It's not the way the system usually works. It's not the way the system was intended. So the Recharge Act is to make sure that all 50 states each take a critical look at how they charge for power at the EV stations, the electric vehicle stations. So many states treat the EV changing stations as if they're, like big factories, always up and running. They can charge amounts of, which make it practically impossible for the charging stations to operate economically. Charging companies, by charging companies, the companies that build these stations say that this, and even more so than funding, is the single biggest barrier to deploying the very fast charging, medium and heavy duty charging stations. Recharge addresses that barrier. It uses a regulatory approach that literally, it's the exact same one that Congress used to get rooftop solar off the ground. So we hope to see the same level of success here. But thanks for the question. I'm proud of the Recharge Act. Obviously, some of my young staff came up with this idea, and I'm sure they borrowed it from somewhere, but I can't claim credit.
Thank you, Senator, and congratulations again on that. It's so exciting. We're going to jump over to a question from Megan in Colorado Springs. She's asking, how much will our taxes increase to pay for this infrastructure bill?
So basically, not a penny. We have structured this so that we are taking excess money from the COVID recovery payments. So when we passed the American Recovery Plan back in, I guess it was January, we were in the middle of a pandemic, and even more so in the summer of 2020, before we had the vaccine. We had to make sure that we were spending the money to get the vaccine as quickly as possible. We had to get it out there and make sure that we had the infrastructure ready so that people could get vaccinated as quickly as possible. And this is one of the great feats of American technology, was being able to address the vaccination of a country in literally record time. And I know it's still a divisive issue, and you hear about it all the time. But we have avoided what could have been a much, much worse, pandemic, where many, many more people could have died. And when we sent out that money, in many cases, we didn't have enough information. So again, that money was not wasted. We asked states not to spend it if it wasn't needed. What we're going to do with the bipartisan infrastructure bill is repurpose a lot of that money that wasn't spent to put it towards building this infrastructure that in many cases is 20 years overdue. We've also been able to tighten up the fraud detection for some of the unemployment insurance claims. And I think there's a lot of money we're going to recover through that process. Anyway, it's things like that are what are going to pay for the entire thing. And nobody making less than $400,000 is going to see their taxes go up. And I think, we will, in the process, even in the bipartisan infrastructure bill, but especially in Build Back Better, we think middle-class taxes should go down by making sure that the wealthy pay their fair share. So anyway, thanks for the question.
Awesome. We are going to bump it over to a video question again. So behind the scenes, folks, we're going to hear from Mayor Coleman with a question on infrastructure.
Hi, Senator Hickenlooper. My name is Ty Coleman, and I'm the mayor of Alamosa. I would like to thank you and your colleagues for your bipartisan efforts in getting this much needed infrastructure bill passed. My question to you is, what measures will be put into place to make sure that funding opportunities reach smaller rural communities throughout the state of Colorado, like Alamosa, which is located in the San Luis Valley?
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Or I can call you Ty. If I had a great name like Ty, we have a long name like Hickenlooper. Ty Hickenlooper would have been pretty close to perfect. Anyway, Mayor, I'll stick with Mayor. Thank you for the question. And the bipartisan infrastructure bill has major investments for highways and bridges, rail, transit, broadband. As I've said, it's going to be literally a huge investment for communities across the state. And there'll be a number of agencies working on the planning of how this money gets spent in the weeks to come. But we have, and I speak not just for myself, but for the entire U.S. Senate, we all believe that rural communities have to be protected and make sure that they get their share. And I think that there's such a strong sentiment there that as the regulations come out, we'll make real progress and make sure that rural economies are included. The idea is that the spending is going to align with the Biden administration's what they call their Justice 40 initiative, which ensures that both disadvantaged communities in rural and urban areas get their needs fulfilled by these federal projects. And that's not just the infrastructure, but also the job training and making sure that a lot of the jobs that too often are imported into a rural area or imported into an urban core area. The goal will be to try and have the job training and the workers coming from the communities in which the work is done. I know that's not going to be perfect, and this is something that is difficult. It sounds good when you talk about it. It's difficult to actually implement, but I think we're going to have a lot of success with it. I'm optimistic that this will be more inclusive, getting more people to do the work and making sure that we get more diversity in the workforce to accomplish these goals.
I heard you say you're optimistic, something that we all see in you all the time, Senator. Thank you there. So we have great participation in Alamosa. So hi to everybody in Alamosa tuning in. We're hearing a question from Richard. Veterans in Colorado are approximately 10% of the population, and 99% of the population is related to veterans. What is your plan to address veterans' needs? Homelessness, employment, education, transportation, healthcare, suicide prevention, etc. in rural Colorado?
Again, another great question. So thank you, Richard. And it's funny, I spent a lot of time when I was governor, and I'm spending a lot of time now with our active duty military personnel, because that's the feeder for our veterans. And there are 400, if you include active duty personnel, we have 450,000 military personnel in Colorado. About 400,000 are veterans, and 50,000 are active duty. And I'll tell you one thing, just to you might not be aware of. I went down and visited Fort Carson in, I think, the end of March, and they have been working now for over a year building the spirit that soldiers take into the field, the culture that comes from that spirit. They're making sure that soldiers really pay attention to how their fellow soldiers are doing. If they're having a hard time, if they're depressed, if they can't seem to get traction in the mornings, they are really looking out for each other in a way that didn't used to happen even just a couple of years ago. And I think that's very exciting. And we're seeing that same approach being used now with veterans to make sure that the vets look out for each other. The amazing thing about our military is that we have such a bond that forms between military personnel when they're engaged. And I think, as I said, when you've got as many vets as we have in this state, over 400,000, you've got to take care of them. They responded bravely to the call of service in the name of our national defense. And I think we have a duty to honor those sacrifices. And we pushed to make Colorado the most veteran-friendly state when I was governor. Implemented skills training for professional skills transfers for professional licenses. So if your spouse was a chiropractor and they moved to Colorado, they could automatically start practicing and have a full year to get their license transferred. I think I want to take the same approach in the Senate. Right now we're working on what's called the NDAA, which is the Defense Appropriations Act. It's passed every year for 50 or 60 straight years. It always passes. And it is the defense funding bill. And it's going to invest more this time in the quality of life for veterans and service members and families. It includes over $2 billion for suicide prevention and $11 billion for long-term care and over $2 billion for homelessness. Anyway, also small business loans for federal procurement, entrepreneurship training, appropriations for, to make sure that the places that provide housing like HUD, that we put veterans at the top of those lists and can make sure they get housing when they need it. We sent a letter to the VA just recently inquiring into services for family members who have lost a veteran, a loved one to suicide, and just to make sure that they're taken care of. Last, the COVID-19 issue, when Congress passed the American Rescue Plan earlier this year, it included $17 billion in dedicated support to make sure that the Veterans Administration had an adequate response to the pandemic. And while, like everything, nothing is perfect in terms of this blasted bug, the pandemic. I actually, from what I can tell, and we've asked around a lot, the Veterans Administration, I think, has done a heck of a job. So anyway, we're still very focused on, making sure that we continue to seek additional funds for our veterans. They deserve everything we can do for them.
Thank you, Senator. Because this is such an important topic, we're going to run a little bit over. I hope you're okay with that. We're going to move on to Renee over in Denver. She asks, what exactly are you doing to advance and pass the Equality Act? Secondly, is there anything you can do as senator to make the process for changing gender markers for veterans dealing with the VA a better experience? Because I found it is not great.
All right. Thank you, Renee, for your question. And let me just say first, we should all strive for an America where who you love or how you identify has no impact on your physical safety or your ability to succeed or your access to health care. You go down the list. The Equality Act expands federal civil rights protections to cover sexual orientation and gender identity. And it is absolutely clear it bars discrimination. In every regard, it bars discrimination. I'm a co-sponsor and pushing it forward for trying to get it to a Senate vote. On the VA, it sounds like you had a difficult experience, and I apologize. We've asked the VA committee in the Senate about this, and we'll follow up with you. I'll make sure that we get somebody to check in and kind of try to sort through this so it doesn't happen again. All right. Thanks for the question.
All right. We have one and then one last really final fun question for you. But this comes from Bob in Denver. Where do you see Colorado priorities converge with national priorities? And where do you see the greatest divergence?
Well, thanks, Bob. I mean, it's funny. I'm amazed at how unique and different Colorado is, but I'm also amazed by how much in common we have with the rest of the country, and the split, the rural and urban split, the divisions over people should be vaccinated, should they not be vaccinated, do businesses have a right to demand that their workers be vaccinated so that everybody can be safe. We see this in Colorado just like we see it all across the country. And I think, those are just a couple of good examples. I hope that we could get past the divisions we're seeing and unify around our response to COVID. Historically, when you have a medical emergency, it isn't as divisive as what we've seen. But again, this is a place where the divisions we've seen here are very similar to what we see all across the country. We unify around jobs, making sure that we can get more job opportunities for more people and have them be better jobs, helping get people back in the workforce. And I think Republicans, Democrats, I think everybody unites around that. And I think everybody in Colorado feels very much the way people feel all across the country. And I think, there's some things that are different. We have, in terms of methane, methane is 80 to 90 times more polluting in terms of climate change than carbon dioxide. It is, 80 to 90 times worse for the first couple of years. Then it breaks down into carbon dioxide and some other things that aren't quite as toxic, don't hold as much heat in as the methane does. But we were the first state back in 2014 to create methane regulations and really try to capture all what they call it fugitive emissions that are running away, that are escaping from pipes and tanks and pits. And we were the first, not just the first state in the country, we were the first government entity anywhere on earth to regulate methane. And now it's been rolled out to the United States, to Canada. We saw last week in Glasgow, Scotland, that over 100 countries signed on to in their own ways to eliminate methane leaks and make sure that pollution doesn't get into the air. So again, that's something it's different. Started here in Colorado, but now it's going to go ahead and be universal. I hope that answers the question. Thanks for the question.
Great. Thanks, Senator. I have one last and maybe particularly important question on something I think most of us can agree on, and that's Taylor Swift. Curious, what is your favorite Taylor Swift song?
That's I guess the one where it's how's the line go? Where the haters gotta hate, shake it off.
Shake it off.
You gotta shake off all the hate and the trolls and do the job people elected you to do. You just gotta shake it off.
Good answer, Senator. They're all so good, though.
I love the fact that she fought back against the hedge fund that bought her the rights to all of her royalties and all the rights to all of her music, and she's re-recording it so that she could control her own legacy. I think that woman is pretty spunky.
She's incredible. We'll have our next town hall particularly focused on Taylor Swift. So tune in next time, everybody. As you can see, we're a little bit over time, but I do want to thank everybody for coming in and joining us live and submitting questions before. We had more than 700 questions submitted ahead of time in this town hall, and even more coming in live tonight. So I'm really sorry that we weren't able to get to everyone, but please do continue to reach out to our office and share what's on your mind. You can always submit questions or comments to our office by phone and email. The details are under the contact tab at hickenlooper.senate.gov. You'll also find phone numbers for each of our Colorado offices and our DC offices on the website as well. And we'll also plan to host more town halls this year, so definitely stay tuned. We'll talk more about Taylor Swift and other pressing issues in Colorado and the nation. So, Senator, any parting thoughts?
Well, thank you, Helen, for doing a noble job of moderating this. And I want to thank everybody listening. If we didn't get your question, send it in. We'll get an answer to you. And really appreciate having the conversation, being able to stay in touch. And I really look forward to getting back down to Alamosa, out to Durango, and out to Julesburg and Grand Junction. I want to get all across the state once we get a little bit further past this COVID. But I think even though we've seen the hospitals fill up these last few weeks, I feel like we're just about to turn the corner. So hang in there, keep using your mask for a few more weeks. Let's get past this last spike of infection and then get on to enjoying the holidays. Thank you all. Thanks for all the questions and all your time.
Thank you, Senator. Take care, everyone.